Good afternoon, greetings everybody. Welcome to our international webinar organized by the Universal Peace Federation Central Europe. My name is Juraj Lajda and I will be the host for this webinar. I will be host for today's program and I all want to greet you from Prague. Before I'm going into details of our program, I would like to mention a couple of items and points that can be helpful for you. First of all, we will have an answer and question session. Our webinar is international. We have over 150 guests from 20 countries and 4 continents who are registered. We have participants from Europe, Africa, South America, and North America. Welcome, everybody. If you saw our invitation, you would have seen our title and also the basic themes. The title of our webinar is European Values in the Time of COVID-19 Pandemic. Now, I would like to introduce our panelists. We have 6 prominent speakers from 5 countries. They are Honorable Mirek Topolánek, Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, 2006 to 2009, and President of the European Council in the year 2009. Welcome. Honorable Nina Nováková, Member of the Czech Parliament 2013-2017, and Chairwoman of the Central European Inspiration. Welcome. Honorable Jan Figel, Special Envoy for Promotion of Freedom of Religion outside the European Union, 2016-2019, from Slovakia. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Peter Cerer, Coordinator, International Media Association for Peace for Europe and Middle East, from Austria. Welcome. Mrs. Edith Frivaldsky, Director of Human Dignity Center from Hungary. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
And finally, we have Dr. Dieter Schmidt, President, Universal Peace Federation Central Europe from Germany. So welcome all our distinguished panel speakers. To say some words about the background of our conference, 4 years ago, we initiated a project focusing on European values in the V4 countries and Austria. In 2016, we had roundtables and conferences in Vienna, Budapest, Bratislava, and in Prague. Several representatives of the political, religious, academic, and media areas signed the Vienna Memorandum in 2016. And this memorandum specified the values that shaped Europe, especially the Judeo-Christian tradition, humanism, antiquity, Renaissance, Reformation, and development of science. Religious freedom and family values are closely connected to these values. So, in our webinar, we have 3 main topics: European values, religious freedom and freedom of press, and family values. For each topic, there are 2 panelists. So let me allow to introduce our first panelist. Honorable Mirek Topolánek graduated from the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering at the Technical University in Brno. In 1996, he started his political career as member of Czech Parliament. From 2006 to 2009, he was the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic. In 2009, he was President of the European Council. In this year, he was actively involved in solving the gas crisis in Ukraine and had organized the first Southern Corridor Summit and hosted the first Eastern Partnership Summit. After leaving high politics, he has been active in energetics business and educational activities. In 2010, he was a candidate of the Czech Republic to International Energy Agency in Paris. In 2018, he was causally unsuccessful in the presidential election. He is a member of Honorary Advisory Board of the International democratic union now. So please, Honorable Mirek Topolánek, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the invitation to this significant panel. Welcome to all participants and especially my friends within the panel. At the beginning, I have to say that the current development in my country, in Europe, in EU, in the world generally, fills me with apprehension. Current hypocritical demonstrations in the US, extended activists around the world, ritual self-flagellation, artificially created feelings of guilt, and upside-down racism are just side effects of the long-term process. We are really threatened. Especially, I am a typical endangered species as an old, white, heterosexual, politically incorrect man, Catholic, smoker, my God. Moreover, I am an old-timer ice hockey player. I have achieved 30 points during my entire career in Canadian scoring. It means 4 children and 9 grandchildren. 4 goals, 6 first assistants, and 3 second assistants, grandchildren obtained with the second wife. I have too many children and too many grandchildren, making a big carbon footprint, as the anti-naturalist idiots criticize. Stop joking. Why do I emphasize the numbers of my descendants? I do care what where they came to and what where they will live in. That's why I feel such a strong responsibility. Our descendant lives matter. I am a supporter of parliamentary democracy, liberal capitalism, and conservative values, Christian ethics, faith, diligence, thrift, and responsibility, education, protection of the traditional family, cultural heritage, and property. I prefer the allegedly surpassed universal value, freedom to all others. I support the basic principle, equality of opportunity much more than solidarity and equality in the outcome. People with similar views are being attacked and ridiculed today from the liberal left, the neo-Marxists, the progressives. According to Winston Churchill, whose statue was destroyed by progressives unprecedentedly now, socialism is a philosophy of failure, a creed of ignorance, and the gospel of envy. The only virtue is equality in poverty. Postmodern progressive ideologies have enriched this characteristic with the dimension of dubious moral imperatives, moral kitsch, and the apocalyptic scenarios of the world. But certainly also applies. Democracy is 2 wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. Liberty is a well-armed lamb contesting the vote. We believe that we still live in relatively free, mostly democratic countries where some rules apply, where the system somehow ensures order, security, human rights. However, the state, under the guise of collective and minority rights and police state methods that are stealing individual freedoms day after day, democracy is becoming a shell, and the mere enforced majority vote capitalism is trampled on in the name of modern European socialism, and world order is in decline. Society is polarized and looking for surrogate problems. During the COVID pandemic, this is doubly true. The COVID deepened these tendencies and effectively legitimized them for many people. I was very, very surprised by the degree of submission, the willingness to accept the loss of freedoms and blunt collectivism. Whatever happens after COVID has been either openly or latently here for a long time. The problems only get worse and worse. COVID only exposed and sharpened these tendencies. What is happening in the US, the European Union, in our Western world? Do we understand that well? Is it just a financial, economic, or even a cultural, value, systemic, migratory, civilization crisis? Is it an inevitable process? How to deal with new postmodern, post-factual ideologies such as aggressive genderism? homosexualism with a breakthrough in family and adoption law, multiculturalism, Islamism with elements of Sharia law, climate alarmism, those post-truth progressivists and neo-Marxist delusion by which the perpetrators of good brainwash our brains. The bent and orientation of liberal capitalism brought the West into technological, economic, but also moral superiority, which the West has wasted in recent decades. None of these previously valid values work today. We are losing freedom, splitting the market, and destroying aspects of democracy which we have enriched with a self-destructive adjective liberal. All this is the cause of the West's decline and inability to face new economic, civilization, and global challenges and risks. I do not expect a change after the COVID. On the contrary, we denied the functioning of the market, the public sector swells and socializes, the welfare state hypertrophies, distributing everything to everyone. We are abolishing individual freedoms in the name of security. We are forcibly politically correct. There was a post-war crime of multiculturalism and boundless migration benevolence. American detente policy and European appeasement return. It means a reluctance to defend, and Western values are gradually being relativized. All this leads to such a threat to our civilization, which has been unparalleled since the fall of the Roman Empire. It's 5 minutes past 12. Democracies fail, and along with the classics, are only one generation away from totalitarianism. I hope a little selfishly that this is no longer my generation. I will try to define the basic values of our civilization we must return to. Western values created over the centuries and fatally destroyed in recent decades are based on Christian-Jewish foundations, humanism, the Enlightenment, and the experience of tragic societal wars, on Christian ethics, diligence and responsibility, education and innovation, on the protection of family, on cultural heritage and property, on a conservative tradition combined with a liberal parliamentary arrangement and a market economy, on a combination of state-guaranteed social security and spontaneous behavior of market participants. It is not just clash between liberals and conservatives, between leftists and rightists, between progressives and traditionalists. It is a cultural and civilizational war for the future of our children and grandchildren, a war for values and, in a sense, a war for survival. What will be next? There are two alternatives. We know the first one from the history: gradual decomposition, increase in tensions, historical resentments, and catharsis of unsuspected dimensions. The better but less likely way is to return to the values that have brought the primacy and dominance of Europe in economics, politics, and morality in the past. Elementary, dear Watson. We need more freedom, more responsibility, more prudence, more market, more confidence in human activity, more confidence is in ourselves, more ethics as old as our civilization. It is our responsibility to push through it definitely. We owe it to our children, grandchildren. These lives matter. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah. And now I would like to introduce our next speaker, Honorable Nina Nováková. She was a member of the Czech Parliament in the years 2013 and 17, and as a member of and at the time she was a member of the Human Rights Committee, the Education Committee, and the Media Committee. As a member of the Parliament, she focused mainly on strengthening family values and improving schools and education conditions for the young people. Honorable Nina Nováková graduated from the Charles University in Prague, where she studied education, Latin, and social sciences. For many years, she taught ethics. She is a founder and chairwoman of the Stará Boleslava City Association. In the year 2017, she founded the Central European Inspiration, an NGO focusing on European values. She is married and has one son. Honorable Nina Nováková, it's your floor. It's your chance to speak.
So thank you for invitation. It's a big honor to be in so privileged society, and we should speak about European values. We often believe that European values and human rights are identical. But how we are using and implementing human rights today it is sometimes in contradiction with European values. In particular, the newly created so-called human rights, for example, sexual and reproductive women's rights, include, for example, the late-term abortion, which goes against the right to life. The same case is euthanasia. The second basic human right, the freedom of conviction and expression. We could hear it from Mr. Topolanek. Now is clearly limited only to concepts rooted in absolute relativism. Third one, the freedom of religion exists in theory, but in practice in Europe there is no protection of what is sacred to millions of people. Those who are unable to reach a spiritual dimension for no fault of their own, because it is not part of standard education. Those people have spiritual needs like everybody else, but they are frustrated because their spiritual needs are permanently unfulfilled. The postmodern European culture is offering them a solution: violence, aggressive attack, and making fun of the sacred. In the current coronavirus times, there is a new warning trend: the interference of state authorities in internal affairs of religious ceremonies and rituals. And it is warning. It looks like human rights are suspended, but European values cannot be suspended. They are a life-giving force for European culture. The common denominator of European values is, I think, humanity, which should make people aspire to be fully human, not to be godlike. We can never be above and beyond good and evil. We should only learn to choose between right and wrong, between good and evil. It is a very long and demanding process with small consecutive steps, which we Europeans call virtues. For example, the first one, moderation, not selfish profiteering and plundering natural resources. Courage, the second one, neither cowardly fear nor aggression. Wisdom, the third one, not ineptitude or arrogance. Justice, it's not favoritism or partisanship. And one level higher, ladies, my friends, is faith, hope, and love. The European culture has also found the best methods how to acquire these abilities or competitions. The method from antiquity is trust to reason, moral principles, the aesthetic dimension of life, and permanently reasoning for justice. Christianity brought the Ten Commandments, social sensitivity, concern for the weak, the chance for rectification, the ability to forgive, and peaceful conflict resolution. Finally, humanism connects antiquity and Christianity in search for answers to three questions: how to be equal, how to preserve freedom, and where to express solidarity. Contemporary Europe rightly condemns wars and armed conflicts elsewhere in the world, but at the same time allows a war against the human as a biological species, as well as against the human as a creature which, by God's will, bears the image of his Creator. On the first front of this anti-human war, we find extreme biocentrists. For them, the human is a harmful and pest species, which is damaging our planet. On the second front, we find fanatic believers in hyperspace or virtual world. And for them, the human is superfluous or redundant. The third front is the front of disintegration of human personality. It's the gender ideology front. This disintegration into human personality into separate, isolated physical, mental, and relationship components. These are three very different perspectives, but all of them are against the mankind. The 21st century clearly demonstrates that progress is a very relative concept, and countries which are not economic leaders can be leaders in the area of humanism. Or more precisely, they should be. We in Central Europe have a common task to transform the culture of depth of fully human existence into the culture of hope and life. We should draw from experience. We shouldn't disregard common sense. And we should have a sensitive heart. Also, we must not renounce our faith. None of this depends on financial resources. Everything depends on humanity. The coronavirus time have also proved that the family is a reliable partner for state authorities. We should say very clearly and confidently, the society is an ecosystem and the family is its basic structure. The structure of family is necessary for our survival, both biological and cultural. The European culture of life, is created by the human who is aware of his own dignity and the dignity of others. A human who feels he belongs to and is an integral part of his family, his country, and Europe. The human who feels connected to the heritage of his ancestors, as well as to the generations to come. A member of the culture of peace, hope, and life feels the interconnection of the physical, mental, social, and spiritual dimensions on the unity of his own personality. A member of the culture of Europe, the culture of life, feels connected to the whole created world. There is currently a task or target for us, Central European people. So let's have a motto, giving Europe its spirit back. Thank you.
Now I would like to introduce our next speaker, Honorable Jan Figel. He studied engineering in power electronics in Košice at the Technical University. Honorable Jan Figel was a member of the European Commission Enterprise and Information Society portfolio. Then he was again member of the European Commission for Education, Training, Culture and Youth portfolio. Also, he was the chairman of the Christian Democratic Movement and the first deputy prime minister of the government of the Slovak Republic and minister of transport, construction and regional development in the years 2010 and 12. 2012 and 16 was vice president of the National Council of the Slovak Republic, and finally in the years 2016 to 2019 he is a special envoy for promotion of freedom of religion outside the European Union. So we would like to hear Honorable Jan Figel, and please take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Laida, for your introduction, but especially for the invitation. And I also send my greetings to my fellow panelists and to all international large audience. Yeah, I think that Nina Novakova mentioned an idea that either human rights or religious freedom. I think this is one of the misunderstandings of our time, because religious freedom or freedom of religion or belief is the fundamental right, is the universal right for everyone, everywhere. The reality, of course, is much, much worse, but we need to understand what we are speaking about or what we are fighting for, what freedom means, rule of law, justice, etc. Because peace, and this is UPF, Universal Peace Federation, peace is fruit of justice. And core of justice, or at least modern justice, is in the respect of fundamental rights of all people, not just majority, not just some privileged, but all. And it means respect of fundamental rights. But if we want to enjoy rights, we have to observe our duties, because freedom and responsibility are two sides of the same coin. And rights and duties are interrelated, and they actually represent our dignity. So if we believe that dignity is the first foundational principle, and human dignity is mentioned as the first European value in the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights from 2000, then we have to understand what dignity means. And one of the most important concepts and rights related to human dignity is freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, freedom of religion. So when we speak about, in short, religious freedom, we actually speak about, and I will define or cite how it is understood in international law since Second World War. Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom either alone or in community with others, and in public or in private, to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance. This is Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or Article 18, the same number of the International Convention on Political and Civic Rights. So why this is important, or crucially important, not just important? Because it's very central human right. It's in the middle of the long list of rights. There are 30 articles. This is number 18. So it's central. Secondly, it's a litmus test of all human rights. we lived, or at least some of us lived in communism, in totalitarian system of Czechoslovakia. And if this freedom is not respected, then the others have the same situation. Freedom of opinion, freedom of expression, freedom of association, freedom of assembly. So if religious freedom is respected, then the others may have the same positive reality. But if it is oppressed, which was the case with totalitarian regime, then all other rights suffer. So it's a litmus test. It is, of course, expansive right, as I said, because it is about freedom enjoyed individually or collectively, in private or in public. It has a lot of meaning for organization or living of society. And it's important for all, believers or non-believers, for people from A to Z. And if I say A to Z, I mean, for example, atheists and Zoroastrians, for all. And at the end, I can say it's clearly or simply the civilizational criterion. Look to history of Europe with so many conflicts, including religious conflicts. Cuius regio, eius religio, territory linked to religion. This was disaster for freedom or for human dignity. Situation in the world today is, of course, maybe part of my message, warring. We know the definition, we know what should be done, but the reality is that close to 80%, more precisely 79%, according to Pew Research Center, which is very credible and professional research institute in Washington, of the global population, close to 80% face high or very high obstacles for freedom of religion or belief. So majority of the world today have very limited freedom of religion or belief. And these limits are different levels and go from intolerance in society through discrimination to persecution and up to the real, not theoretical, but real bloody reality, which is a genocide. I'm not speaking about history, but I'm speaking about realities now, today, in current years. And the second bad news or negative news is that trends are warring. So situation is negative. Almost 4 people out of 5 have high or very high obstacles, and numbers are growing. And these numbers are very high because major populations, including China, including India, Russia, or other countries, belong to this group, unfortunately, regrettably. So what we need, I would like to say a message for you, for all, for future is religious freedom, climate change, or for, as we use this jargon, for climate change, because situation is bad and trends are negative. And it is issue not connected with few or some. It concerns millions or hundreds of millions of people in different regions of the world. So we are speaking really about painful situation and need for positive change. Just few remarks to conclude. I was, yes, first ever EU Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion or Belief since June 2016. And I think this decision was not only political because it was decided by European Commission and proposed by European Parliament, but it was our response to the ongoing mass atrocities in the Middle East, or as we say in Slovak or Czech language, Blízký východ, Náhé Ost, Orient Proche, which is our neighborhood, which is cradle of European culture, religions, Judeo-Christian tradition. And genocide was very visible, it was not hidden. And it means that, again, we failed to stick to what we promised or our democracy signed for in 1948 and after. It was anti-genocide convention, which is based on 3 important principles or P's: to prevent, to protect, and to punish. We didn't prevent genocide, we didn't protect victims, and we didn't punish perpetrators of these horrible, inhumane crimes. And genocide was oriented against Christians, Yazidis, Shia Muslims, Kakais, Sabaks, and many different minorities against the mosaic in the Middle East. But the same is going on against Rohingyas in Myanmar, or Uyghurs in China, Christians in Sri Lanka, or you can name and list situation now in Burkina Faso or Nigeria. It's very painful. So response of European Union was historically first time special envoy, special agenda, good actions, and connection between religious freedom and development. The same was followed by several European member states like Germany, United Kingdom, Netherlands, Denmark, Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic. They established their special representatives or envoys or departments dealing with freedom of religion or belief. In Slovakia, the new government put this commitment into the governmental manifesto. So I hope something will change and we will see some positive fruits of this awareness and joint action. So basically this was, and this is my message, not so much about description, but rather appeal to work in favor of the civilizational criterion. Maybe I should add, for example, there are 13 countries in the world with capital punishment for atheism. There are 22 countries persecuting people, including capital punishment for conversion or apostasy. And there are over 70 countries punishing blasphemy. So this is a major issue of our times. We really need to move to 21st century, and religious freedom in due respect and promotion is our objective and criterion. Thank you very much.
And now we would like to invite our next speaker, Mr. Peter Zerer, who is a coordinator of the International Media Association for Peace for Europe and Middle East. And we need to mention also his history, because in 2005 he co-founded 4F Europe, an NGO which became a respected freedom monitor as well as a media forum for members of religious minority groups, the opponents, public media, legislators, government agencies, and human rights defenders. 4F means Forum for Religious Freedom. 4F's fundamental premise is that religious freedom of one is an attack on the freedom of all. Thus, it defends the rights of all religious groups, and does so in former Soviet Union nations, the Middle East, and even in Asia. 4F addresses human rights violations regularly in the OSCE and at the United Nations. Peter Zerer is also active in social media and advises minority groups and in media matters. In December 2018, the Austrian Journalists Association granted him its Silver Pin Award. So please, Peter Zerer, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Juraj, for this kind introduction. And thank you, panelists. It was a very profound message which we received here. Dear panelists, dear ladies and gentlemen, let me talk about the media perspective of COVID-19 and European values. Antonio Guterres, the UN chief, gave a very gave a benchmark speech on the 3rd of May, the day of press freedom. And he says, on World Press Freedom Day, we call on governments and others to guarantee that journalists can do their jobs throughout the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. As the pandemic spreads, it has also given rise to the second pandemic, the pandemic of misinformation, from harmful health advice to wild conspiracy theories. The press provides the antidote, verified, scientific, fact-based news and analysis. But since the pandemic began, many journalists are being subjected to increased restrictions and punishments simply for doing their jobs. Today, we thank journalists and the media for holding leaders in every sector accountable and speaking truth to power. That was part of his speech. It's the point. As Dr. Figel already mentioned, freedom and responsibility like the two sides of the same coin. The UNESCO chief, Audrey Azoulay, pointed out that just as in war, truth could be considered the first casualty of the coronavirus pandemic. According to the Press Freedom Index, most of the top-ranking countries are European countries, not top-ranking in violating press freedom, but top-ranking in performing well on press freedom. In fact, 7 out of 10 European countries are in the first 10. There are other European countries too, of course. Just let me pick a few. Poland is 62, Hungary is ranking 89, Serbia 93. Of course, China is 177, North Korea is 180. The incredible tensions between freedom and responsibility. If journalists misuse or overstep their granted freedom, they will lose public trust and respect, and there will be calls, even in liberal democracies, to curtail press freedom and show them the red card. Media is regarded as the fourth column since the French Revolution already. Governments should support media, not just use the media. One Balkan nation, a journalist colleague from that Balkan nation, told me that the government employs 40 highly paid press officials to spin every information coming out of every government ministry, department, and then it will be disseminated to the press. In other words, what this government is doing, they're spoon feeding the media. Media has no access to unprocessed information and facts. All the facts are designed already by the government before they reach the public. This is not press freedom. One of my journalist colleagues, she said, Peter, the most dangerous virus of all, do you know this? I said, Corona maybe. No, he said, the most dangerous virus of all is the false narrative. And I thought about this, and let's just take this COVID-19 battle of narratives. It's a real propaganda war, actually. There was the Chinese government, the CCP, used their media power to lock down and to shut up, the journalists. So you may have heard, in the beginnings of the spread of the virus, there was a doctor, there were 8 doctors in Wuhan, all of them were silenced. Some of them are dead now, others are disappeared. One of them, who was regarded the hero by normal Chinese people, Dr. Li, and he spoke out. He became the conscience of the nation. He spoke out, and then very soon he he was shut up and he finally died by the COVID virus. China does not have a press freedom in their category of values. The cover-up of the origin and the spread of the COVID-19 was incredible. They are using their entire propaganda machine and media power in an official way and in clandestine media operations to spin their narrative. In China, just quote one example. Just a few days ago, actually, 147,000 false Twitter accounts have been shut down by Twitter. These were all Twitter accounts created by the Chinese CCP. But also, of course, others are spinning their messages. BBC World Service, Voice of America, Russia Today, China Global Television Network, Al Jazeera, they all bring news seen from different angles. Of values on a global scale, that's what we can say. There's Sino-US, the Sino-EU tensions, they have flared up now. As Dr. Fiegel has mentioned before, the religious freedom issue is a very serious issue, and we have in Europe, we have one country where this has become a special case, the religious freedom issue. In France, from the 27th to the 21st of February 2020, the Evangelical Church, Open Doors, held an annual international gathering of fast and prayer in Mulhouse. About 2,000 Christians attended that convention, including families and children from France and neighboring countries. 18th of February, that was just when this was going on, this convention, President Macron was at a public meeting in Mulhouse getting a crowd bath and shaking hands with many people, over 300 meters from the distance from the Evangelical Church. On the 22nd to the 29th of February, the annual agricultural show in Paris took place, which Macron attended and high-level politicians attended. As usual, and just closed its doors one day earlier because of the possible threat of the virus. On the 29th of February, the French government announced that it had decided to take some precautionary measures, such as forbidding gatherings of more than 5,000 people. Mrs. Josiane Chevalier, a recently appointed High Representative of State, regional state, of the state, on the 17th of March, she declared on French radio station that the pandemic has started from an evangelical gathering which took place in Mulhouse with more than 3,000 people and no respect for the restrictive measures. And we pay a high price for this disrespect of basic measures. But you know, this was before there was any knowledge of this pandemic. But this accusation spread, scapegoating the evangelical event, it was totally baseless. Again and again, in her contacts with the media, she stigmatized the evangelical church as the cluster that had infected the whole region. French and media reproduced her declarations without checking the facts, and thereby further stigmatized the evangelical church. So, of course, we could say a lot more about this, but let me just conclude. There was an incredible hypocrisy recently with the Black Lives Matter rallies in London and Berlin, Vienna. Vienna had 50,000 people demonstrating without any restrictions or respecting any restrictions, but the churches were still empty. This is hypocrisy. And the media, they did not really point out this hypocrisy. They pointed out many other things, but not this hypocrisy. which is very sad. Let me tell you, these are not just European values. This needs to become media freedom, press freedom needs to become universal values. Finally, let me conclude. Antonio Guterres also told, we call on governments to protect media workers and to strengthen and maintain press freedom, which is essential for future peace, justice, and human rights for all. Dr. Hak Moon, when she founded this media association, she said, just one sentence, tell the truth to the world. Let me finish with that, and thank you for listening. Thank you very much.
Now we would like to come to the area of the family values. And family values is a part of European values. We have two excellent speakers in this part, which will come to the end slowly. One is from Hungary and the other one is from Germany. So first, let me introduce Mrs. Edith Frivaldsky. She is a Hungarian pro-life and pro-family advocate. She was the president of the Citizens Committee of Mom, Dad and Kids European Citizens Initiative to protect marriage as a union of one man and one woman. In the Together for Life Association, she supports women in crisis pregnancies to make pro-life choices, and as the director of Human Dignity Center, she raises awareness on the importance of family on national and international level. Mrs. Frivaldsky holds a degree in English language and literature and economics. She is married and has 3 daughters. Please, you can speak.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I hope you can hear me well. I will focus on the family from a European values perspective in contemporary Europe. The real question is, will the current pandemic shift Europe to a pro-family direction? The coronavirus pandemic shows the importance of the family. This is the place where people go back to in times of crisis. This is the safe haven we return to in uncertainty. It was not so visible when the economies were booming, when people could afford living alone in single households without depending on one another, and when people worked in other countries to be better off financially. But when the virus entered our countries and our lives, in an extremely short time, borders were closed and the families visibly became the engines of the society. Now it became clearly visible that the family is the fundamental group unit of the society that deserves the protection by the society and the state, as Article 16 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says. Is the protection of this fundamental group unit of the society among the European values? On paper, maybe. In practice, not so much. If we look at the EU values from the family perspective, then we have to see that whether the EU can define family, and are parents free to educate their children according to their beliefs, and does the EU support the complementary roles of men and women? Let's see the family definition. The European Union has no competence in defining the family. It is left to the member states how they define marriage and family. The EU has no competence, but it does define marriage and family when it comes to, for example, mobility of people. That is, when a family moves from one member state to another to work and live there. And it is absolutely important that in these instances, marriage and family should be defined as it is accepted in all member states. Such definition would reflect the fact that the union of a man and a woman makes place for a new life. The state strengthens this process by registering the marriage and supporting childbirth. But some countries and some institutions ignore the role of nature and push for definitions outside this natural circle. So did Mr. Franz Timmermans, the Executive Vice President of the European Commission in 2015, in his opening speech at the European Equality Gala, organized by ILGA Europe, saying, "I also believe the Commission should go forward and try to get all member states in the EU to unreservedly accept same-sex marriage as other marriages." This quote gives us a glimpse of what Mr. Timmermans thinks about equality. IRGA Europe is the largest LGBTI lobby group in the EU, mostly financed by the European Commission to lobby the European Commission to promote gay rights. Let's go to slide 4, if possible. Equality from a family perspective. What is true equality? Is it an equal sign between men and women, or is it accepting the complementary nature of the two sexes and providing equal rights, or rather equal opportunities for both genders? You don't have to live in a family to know what it takes to raise children. It takes time, effort, sacrifice, but you can only see its rewards if you have children. There can be no equal sign between a father and a mother, since they have different roles and responsibilities in life. These differences should be reflected in laws as well. And this is where documents that ignore the biological reality come into the picture. For example, the currently and already mentioned Istanbul Convention, which is a European Council Convention, is one of the highly debated documents that defines gender as a social construct. It introduces gender ideology and implements it into national legislation. That's why it is often called the Trojan horse of gender ideology. Let's go to the next slide. What about education? The next generation is also under attack when it comes to the gender concept. What do children learn in the kindergartens and the schools? Let's go to the next slide. The so-called comprehensive sexuality education and its guidelines teach sexual behaviors for children from 5 years old, analyzing pornographic materials and same-sex relationships from 12 years old, all in the school context. This educational trend, in fact, sexualizes children and harms the family. It all happens in the schools without the knowledge of the parents. They teach 12-year-old girls to go for an abortion without parental consent. It also ignores the freedom of religion, as makes the teaching of same-sex attraction and abortion highly recommended, if not obligatory in schools. More and more EU documents mention the importance of comprehensive sexuality education without strengthening the rights of the parents to choose the best education for their kids. These materials are not only pushed in the EU, but are also supported by UN agencies like WHO, so the World Health Organization, UNESCO, or UNFPA. Next slide, please. What pro-family steps were taken? Let's see the Mom, Dad and Kids European Citizens Initiative. In 2013, the European Commission built a channel for the citizens to help them set the agenda for the EU and opened the possibility to launch citizens' initiatives in the EU. With a citizens' committee of at least 7 members from 7 different member states, collecting at least 1 million signatures in 1 year, that supports their initiative relevant in the EU framework, people can actually ask the Commission to put their request on their agenda. Of course, it does not mean that the request will be granted. It means only that they will discuss the question. Still, it seemed a very strong instrument at the beginning. Also starting an ECI, European Citizens Initiative, creates an all-over Europe mobilization and serves communication purposes on today's relevant topics. With these in mind, we started the Mom, Dad and Kids European Citizens Initiative in 2015. We did collect 1 million signatures with a lot of opposition from unexpected sources, but it was not enough to validate the results due to missing data and unwilling state authorities. While we never truly expected Mr. Timmermans and his colleagues to define marriage as a union of 1 man and 1 woman and family based on this union, but we did our share as active citizens of the EU to fight for it. It was also a great occasion to raise public awareness and find allies in different countries. What about the Istanbul Convention? Currently, the countries that hasn't ratified the Istanbul Convention yet in the EU, which is also called by some the Gender Convention, are under huge pressure from the EU. The confusion of gender definition, whether it is an objective truth representing the 2 biological sexes, or a subjective self-image referring to the different self-made definitions of one's sexual identity, has its consequences on marriage and family definitions. As traditional roles are to be eliminated in this convention, and education is also part of it, the Istanbul Convention is also highly questionable from a religious freedom perspective. Since it is best to clarify what gender means and avoid future confusion, we contacted our government summarizing our concerns. The decision makers listened to our voice, and after further investigation of the convention, they decided not to ratify it. Since then, with parliamentary majority, they clearly declared that Hungary does not intend to ratify the Istanbul Convention. I would like to also mention the protection of the family resolution. It's a UN resolution, but it is important for us also in the EU to follow the work of the United Nations. In 2015, the UN Human Rights Council accepted the resolution on the protection of the family that also strengthens it as the fundamental group unit of the society. I mention this so that we know the tools we have to raise awareness on these tendencies on all levels. So where do we go from here? Maybe it was only me as a parent overwhelmed by the beauties and the struggles of online school from one day to another, but it seemed to me that the EU did very little to support families in the current pandemic. Of course, family is not an EU competence, and it should remain so. It is also our role to clarify again and again that it should remain so. The EU has no word in how we define marriage and family. Instead of putting pressure on countries to ratify a convention that creates a legal confusion, the EU should put pressure on countries to strengthen their family support system, introduce family-friendly taxation, change from a work-life balance perspective to a family life-work balance perspective, and all in all regard family and not the individual as the basic unit of the society. The family unit should be the key when we talk about consumers in the market or workforce in the economy. The coronavirus makes people realize the importance of the family, and it makes decision makers realize that families build the protecting network of the society. With healthy families, the societies can stand up both mentally and economically after the crisis. If states support the fundamental unit of the society, then the country is better off from many aspects. We are under test now, and we will see whether it's true. Thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to your questions and remarks.
We have to come to the last but not least speaker, and I would like to introduce Dr. Dieter Schmidt. He was born in September 1953, member of the unification movement of Sun Myung Moon since 1976, doctor in medicine from University in Bonn, Masters of Oriental Medicine from Kyung-Hee University of Seoul, Korea, President of the German Family Federation for World Peace and Unification, President of UPF in Central Europe, active family doctor, father of 3 daughters, married to Ana Labarga from Spain. And I would like to add some more points. He actively worked for the reunification of Germany, and also he works and practices the unity of Eastern and Western medicine. So, Dr. Dieter Schmidt, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Juraj Lada, first for the invitation. It's a big honor to be among these prestigious panelists, and I thank you all for your amazing, profound speeches, especially to Mrs. Edith Friwalski. I really respect your comment, and it was so good that it's almost very hard to follow on that topic, what you just said. I think it's great in what preciseness you put the situation. Well, I have looked at the topic, what is being asked here about European values. And the values, as we all know, are basic and fundamental beliefs that guide or motivate our attitudes and actions. And when we look at the European values, which are mentioned in the European Union, they are listed like respect for human dignity and human rights, freedom, democracy, equality, and the rule of law. These are the values of the member states, but we realize very quickly that the mentioning of the family is not there. And we already heard just now that it is accepted, but it is definitely not supported at all. So I often ask people, because I'm a very practical person as a medical doctor, about some universal truths. Maybe they are not yet values, but these questions are so fundamental, because the question is, how can we bring people together that they can unite on values? Well, before maybe we come to the values, the truth is that every human being in this world or in all history has parents. There's no one without any parents. That's one truth nobody can deny. And the other truth is, maybe also interesting, no one of us has ever been asked if he wants to live or not. We were all just came into being. Nobody asked us if you want to be here or not. So what is the right that some human being can be born? What do we have to do? If we are the ability to create new life, we have to take responsibility for that new life. And to take responsibility for new life takes 100% a father and a mother. So the most fundamental truth is life starts with love, and love is the origin. And out of that love, new life comes out. And where does it come out? It comes out in the love between man and woman. So, and then in the moment the child is there, we call it a family. And this fundamental truth is undeniable. You don't even need to believe in God. It's true for anyone. So why can we not make that simple truth become clear? And it is the center, it's the origin of life. Well, you might want to say that even our cause, our first creator, is God, who we can call heavenly parent, because obviously he has to have a masculine and a feminine aspect as well. So in that sense, the Judeo-Christian tradition, which we often claim to have in Europe as our values, definitely should be revived with that simple truth. So then it was already mentioned very beautifully that in the time of Corona pandemic, people realized suddenly that not the state is the most important thing with all its interference into the family, but the family becomes again the most important thing. I just want to read to you what a very famous person in Germany writes about that. The family now proves itself as the most systematically important group in society at all. Parents educate and raise their children at home all day long. The younger ones shop for older family members and give them a phone call where visits are currently too dangerous. Grandparents take care of grandchildren. Siblings help each other. The central importance of the family must also be reflected in politics and the future. We will take care of that. So I have patients who now suddenly have to take care of their children all day long, and suddenly they have to do homeschooling. Well, interestingly, some of the children became much better since the time when now suddenly the parents took over this role, and especially, of course, the mother. So the family, as it was mentioned already, is the haven where suddenly the state has to rely on, otherwise the whole system would have collapsed. But the family is also, like we would say, the school of love. It is probably, or it is the only institution, if at all, God has created. God never originally created religions, but he created the family. So we have to really know what is the origin of this whole life. Well, as it has been mentioned already very well, this family is now attacked. And the attack on the family, like we heard from gender mainstream, is going into every aspect of our life. And we have been sleeping. We have been sleeping so much that, it is like it was said, it is already 10 past 12. to really come back. So I really congratulate for the Mom, Dad and Kids European Initiative. We have similar initiatives here in Germany. And I can only say that now we have to support these initiatives. We have to really unite together to reestablish the basic values which are originated in the family. Politics, if we really want to be successful in our future, has to be centered on the family. All politics has to take into account the value of the family, because it's the birth of life, it's the birth of love, and everything has to be re-evaluated. And we have to have that clear in our mind. And also, I like to say one more thing. Maybe it is the time through the coronavirus that we are reflecting about life in general and where we are all going to head. We realize that we are all interconnected. Whatever is being made out of it. One thing I can say as a doctor in all this history which is happening about the corona pandemic, very little is being said how to treat it, how to make yourself immune against it. And there are very good natural ways how you can be protected against corona. Nothing is being almost said about that. Only some very intensive care or measurements are being asked us to do. But one thing we can maybe reflect upon, we are definitely all interconnected. So why don't we realize two things out of the corona pandemic? We have a very limited planet and we are one big family. And why can we not understand that this family has one common origin, which we can call God, or we can call him Heavenly Parent, as our founder, Mother Moon, has suggested. And under this umbrella, a new consciousness can arise, that we have to learn to trust each other, that we are like a family, and we don't have to kill each other or don't trust, but we have to come to a new level of trust and overcome all the psychological barriers. Well, this can be a movement which can overturn finally all these institutions and policies which have proven not to work to bring peace for the whole world. In that sense, I'm very honored to be here, and I greet all the listeners here, and I thank you all for the possibility to give my thoughts on this topic. Thank you very much.
Now, I would like to thank to all the panelists. We had 6 panelists and very good speeches. Thank you very much. We have some questions to the panelists, but before that, I would like to ask the panelists, each of you, to give a question to your colleague. What you liked, from the speech of another panelist. And then we can come to the point of questions. So who would like to start, to ask somebody from the panelists, among the panelists? Maybe Honorable Nina Novakova, please.
I would like to ask Mrs. Pripatsky, you know about the international petition against Istanbul Convention and the initiative to European Commission. Do you know? Because Central European inspiration have now in Czech Republic petition with 20,000 signatures, not online, everything on paper. And now is I know there is some new initiative international. Do you know about this initiative?
Yes, I know the Polish one, and I read about it, and I know that from Hungary there are several organizations helping it and joining it and collecting also signatures. But with the international conventions, it's usually the country that ratifies it, signs, and then ratifies the convention. So we usually focus on, in these topics, on the Hungarian government and try to explain our arguments, whether it's good or not so good to ratify such a convention, and try to use arguments, which are not so religious, but to translate our faith into words and arguments, and using a legal basis for supporting the arguments. Yes, I know about them, and we work together on some of them. There is also the new one from the International Labour Organization, so we have to pay attention to that as well. And my question is to Mr. Jan Figel, is about religious freedom and its connection to protecting the families. How is it put? Is there any clear document or clear message from you who protects religious freedom that is connected to the protection of the family? Is there anything that somewhere where in a European document these two are connected?
I need to add or share information that my mandate is finished by the outgoing European Commission since November. So I am not in formal position. Secondly, that I had no power but only special advisory role. On this issue, I would say that it's important that at least for the first time, and I hope again or in future even more, European Union and Europe as a whole will reflect on importance of freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, and freedom of religion, because this is the deepest expression of human dignity. And it means also freedom to share the religious belief, the religious conviction, which has impact on human life, on culture of our countries or nations. And as you said also in your contribution, there is no specific definition of family in the European legislation. Actually, in the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, there is clear message or article saying that marriage and family are in the compound or are defined by the national legislation. From this point of view, I would even dwell more on this subsidiarity principle because it is important. On the EU level, we will not find consensus anymore, or if we want to find a common denominator, it is actually marriage as a unique union of one man and one woman. This is accepted everywhere, but some countries go further and they adopt it either in legislation or in the decision of the courts, expanded or different definitions. My country, Slovakia, adopted 5 years ago constitutional amendment on definition of marriage and state duty or obligation to protect comprehensively marriage and promote its good. I think it's really important step forward, inspirational, but it's for all nations to provide or to define their approach, their attitude to family. And I was, and this is post-scriptum, I was in Egypt recently in February, and I met Pope Tawadros from the Coptic Church, and His Holiness said the definition of family. Maybe you know it, maybe not, but I would love to share it. Family, father and mother, I love you. Father and mother, I love you. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, so if anybody has a question to each other, because there is a short of time and we really are very, very in a pressure somehow. So Mr. Peter Zerer, please, shortly, some question.
I have a short question to Dr. Figel. since you, as I understand, your mandate has finished as a special envoy for the freedom of religion and belief, and but you have done a wonderful job, as everybody knows. Will this mandate be prolonged, or will there be a new person in this function appointed? Do you know any of that?
Actually, I am not aware of any decision, so there is no continuity. There is also no name or person somehow invited to start something or change something. But there is a lot of there are some initiatives or a lot of appeals on this agenda, because it's important, not only for Europe, but also outside Europe. And Europe was seen as important promoter of freedom of religion or belief. And recently, I know that some member states initiated an appeal led by Poland and by Netherlands towards Joseph Borrell. I'm sure that the European Parliament is raising its voice on this agenda because it was very supportive. Next presidency is German presidency, and Germany established its special envoy or plenipotentiary for this agenda. So I think that there are prospects to get it renewed, but I want to stress it's not my issue or my personal interest. I would like to underline that this is important for the credibility of Europe in area of human rights, and even more important, this is for people who suffer. If we want to really deal with refugee or migration, I think promotion of freedom of religion or belief is one of the key issues for our neighborhood.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. If there are no more questions among yourselves as panelists, then we can make a short session of questions from the floor.
Yeah, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be able to ask you a few questions. We don't have so much time, actually. We already overpassed the time allotted to us. But there's a special question to Honorable Topolanek. You mentioned in your speech about having more ethics, together with more freedom and responsibility. But in that field, how do you think we can have more ethics, and who would be primarily responsible to help the people embrace that particular value?
Thank you very much for this question. I think everybody is personally responsible for himself, and I prefer this bottom-up principle. At first, you are responsible for himself, you are responsible for family, you are responsible for children, and your responsibility how to increase thinking about what is ethic, what is a tradition, and so on, is in family. Everybody, we are like-minded group, everybody understands it. We have the basic agreement in this, that family is a basic stone of everything. And I think I don't believe that current schools and current society is able to raise our children. It is our own responsibility how to do it. At first, I didn't believe that I will repeatedly enjoy this communist behavior that I have to explain to my children, sorry, it is not sentence for your school. It is impossible to present publicly. And at first, I don't do it, yeah? Because my children has all the times many troubles, because at first we must not be intimidated. We have to be brave and to present in our example these ethic principles. And maybe everybody has a little bit different ethic principles, but the responsibility is totally in family. That's all.
Thank you very much. Yeah. There's another question to Mrs. Fribalski. It's a question about what do you think young people would want to have as values in Europe? What do you think young people's dream for values would be?
Actually, there were some surveys in this question before, and of course, it's a human thing that everybody wants safety, but compared to what the EU represents regarding marriage and family, young people do want to have families, do want to get married, and of course, it's only my area, my field of work, but regarding European values like tolerance, human dignity, I'm not sure that everybody is aware of what they mean or what they intend to mean in the EU framework. We have to ask young people, but also focus on the misinformation that spreads sometimes around these values, whether what they represent and who are the young people we are asking, how they are selected when we do a survey. From what I see, that young people do want to have like a future that they can build on, that they can plan, they can live in safety, in security, and not just like a military security, but have a healthy family.
Thank you very much. And a last question to Dr. Dieter Schmidt. And it's a question that comes from America. And the person asks, what was the response of the EU in light of the pandemic and in relationship to the values, to the European values? So what was the EU response?
Wow, that's a big question which is still going on. So the EU is constantly meeting to make new possibilities now, as it is now possible, I think, from today that we can travel all over the EU again. Basically, I would say that it is not too much listen to doctors about what I said already, how we can help the people not to get infected, or if you get infected, not to get, let's say, really sick. This has not mentioned very much. So the main response is we have to wear masks now, which is amazing. We have to only meet in small groups or just in the family. That's why the family became so important again. The schools have been locked down and so on. You all know that, and it has been quite similar all over the different nations. And now I think we are opening up again. But just to give you one example, I mean, there's one herb which helps very much against corona. It's Radix glycerice. I don't know exactly the English word, Süßholz or sweet wood. But this is never mentioned. You know, people are spending now millions and billions to find, you know, some kind of medicine against it. But there's a lot of mistakes being done too. On the other hand, I have to say that it was almost impossible to find the right answer. If you are too loose, you were accused. If you are too strict, you are accused. The most important thing is now, are we going to come back to the normal life with where the restrictions, you know, will be lifted again, so that we can be again in a Europe where we are responsible, but we can overcome such a challenge. Yeah, I know it's probably not the sufficient answer to that question, but this is what I can say at this moment.
Thank you very much. So we are really in the last final stretch. So it's just the opportunity for each one of you to give one sentence, one last commentary, one last conclusion remark. And we'll start from Honorable Topolanek and then go in the same row as the panelists went.
Tolerance is not weakness.
Great.
That's all.
Thank you. Honorable Nina Novakova?
We must give a spirit back to the world, the fourth spiritual dimension.
Thank you very much. Then Honorable Jan Fiegel?
Thank you all for this wonderful exchange and community of, I think, like-minded people. What I would say, there are, and there will be some crises in our life, whether national, international, family, community lives. The road out of crisis needs two basic components: common sense and living conscience. So let's use common sense and living conscience to learn and to get out of this coronavirus crisis into more humane 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then Mr. Peter Zörer, please.
Thank you. I think the content of this panel discussion is very useful, very important for political leaders, religious leaders, and many decision makers in our society. So I appeal to the media to spread this message. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Vivalski?
I think that my message is that we have to be active citizens and make our voice heard so that the family does become the fundamental group unit of the society, even in the decision makers' minds. So everybody must be aware of that.
Thank you very much. And finally, Dr. Dieter Schmidt.
Yeah, thank you again for this beautiful conference. My sense would be, let's all unite to bring our European and worldwide community together as one family where love can become realistic or livable.
Wow. Thank you so much for so much wisdom that you gave all of us and all the people who were on that webinar. And I give back the word to Dr. Jura Laida, who actually initiated all this. Thank you very much.
Anyway, thank you very much. So we are coming to the end of our webinar, and I'm very happy that we could have these wonderful panelists, and also that we could have 6 panelists from 5 countries. And we had almost 150 people who were watching this webinar. It was also on the YouTube stream, and I think that there were very valuable ideas. There were many questions and comments. I'm very sorry for those who were writing these comments that we cannot, because of time, lack of time, we cannot answer all of them, but we will try to answer afterwards, or we will try to give some communication with those people who were writing. So thank you for this wonderful webinar and conference, which was much better, far beyond my expectations. I was doing this for the first time, and also thank you for people who were behind. And especially, I would like to thank to Dr. Dieter Schmidt as a UPF Central European Director or President, also to Mr. Miloš Klas as a UPF representative in Slovakia, and also to Chantal Komagata. I didn't introduce her because of lack of time, but she is a wonderful person working in Switzerland. I mean, doing many activities. She is Secretary General of Universal Peace Federation in Switzerland, and also co-coordinator for UPF Central Europe. There were also 2 translators behind for Czech language, Jana Lajdová, and for Slovak language, Matej Gardoš, and also we had many other people who supported this webinar. So finally, I think this is a memorative picture. We can see all of you. Can you make like a gallery picture? We can see all of you, and please, we can greet each other, smile and wave if you can. All of you, please, all of you. And all of you, we can have a commemorative photo. And anyway, thank you. And I hope that we can meet again. And this is really the end, the end. And one more announcement, that on the 26th of June, we will have a peace talk. And the topic will be the European Union in the emerging global world order. So I would like to invite you, and maybe we will send invitation. And the second announcement is the 30th of June is a United Nations Day of Parliamentarism. I think it's not very known among people, but really it's very important, because parliaments are like backbone of democracy. So that's all from my side. And thank you very much. Have a nice evening and see you soon. Goodbye.